Good evening. After all those discussions, speeches, I'm really sure you all might be really energized, start off new things, start off and implement new ideas in your company. But before we start off, let me ask you a question. Who wants to be the next Steve Jobs? Hands up. Awesome. We can see some future billionaires on stage, on the audience. Awesome. Who wants to be the future Elon Musk? Hands up. Superb. I'm getting really excited now. Great. Okay. Who wants to be the next Bill Gates? Again, hands up. Superb. If you want to build such a company, you need to have a lot of experience in building companies, running a company. But when it comes to experience, it doesn't mean that it is always your experience. You could take others' experience and go along the path. And for that, today we have an eminent panel of personalities who are ready to share their thoughts and experiences on how to scale your startup. To start off with, you all have changed how we think, how the society thinks, and you all have changed the world actually. If you look at people like Steve Jobs, Einstein, Walt Disney, during their childhood they were cornered because they think big, they think new. When you started off, what were the difficulties that you all had to face? How was the beginning? Starting from Jiffry.
Thank you. I think every entrepreneur has his ups and downs. I've been in this space for over 10 years now. So yeah, there's been many challenges. But if you ask about growing up, I think, well, there's many. In fact, I can't list per se, but I think the most important thing was getting to know things. I think I grew up in an era where we didn't have mobile phones, right? So we didn't have access to a lot of things at that time. In fact, I met a guy that I studied with in 2001, and I was wondering why haven't I been in touch with him? And I remembered, when I was in university, we didn't have Facebook, right? So I'm not. So that just shows that we didn't have information at that time. So I had to go to libraries to learn the new technologies. We had to go to places to figure things out. But now you've got everything in your fingertips, so it's a lot more accessible.
Amazing. Sofie?
When you asked me how I was different or what I was challenging as a child, I really liked the question because I never linked it to myself now. But I remember an example. I think we were 16 and we had a project in school to start a business for 1 month. So one of my classmates, he made a restaurant for the parents to come and eat. And I really wanted to serve there because I worked also in a restaurant and I like that. But he chose all the classmates to help him and to serve in the restaurant. But he told me, no, you're not allowed because I'm the manager and I don't think you will listen to me. You are too stubborn, so you are not allowed to work with me.
Great. Chalinda.
I think comparing myself to Steve Jobs and all of these, I think it's a bit ludicrous. Anywhere near that. But I think for me, looking back, I was very not so focused on the education that the system was providing, so to speak. I started making money since I was about 10 years old, selling stamps to whatever. And I have 2 older brothers who are from a different vintage, so to speak, 10 and 14 years older. And it's a Sri Lankan culture where when you get your first salary, you give it to the family. So I remember when my elder brother I think his first salary was about 3,000 rupees. And when he handed over to my mother, I was already making 7,000 rupees a month, selling magazine pages. So obviously they didn't know about it. So I've always been, but I don't think I was ever cornered. I was more interested in making money and being a grown-up, I guess, because of my brothers who are older to me.
Right. So entrepreneurship has been in your for all of you, like it's been in your gut and the blood, like. So it's really exciting.
Just the fact that I love making money. That's it.
and like now you're on track, right? Like with
Yeah.
all the investment, superb. Right. Moving on, looking at the last 7 to 8 years, having a startup was not easy. But after the war, startup has become a trend. What do you have to share on that? This sudden boom on startups popping up. And what do you have to share on that, Chalinda?
Right. So I first started in 2010 as part of ICTA, and we changed some of the strategies that we have so that we could promote entrepreneurship. And I remember going into University of Moratuwa, the Colombo University, trying to get people to start off with their project. And we were offering a grant of $5,000, and everyone was like, why should I start my own company? I already have a job. So no one was even remotely interested, and they couldn't really relate to why they should start a company. Fast forward 7 years, and now when I go to university, every single person wants to do their startup. So it's good and bad. I think it's good in terms of the whole proliferation of entrepreneurship has cascaded across the country. And thanks to stuff like Startup Weekend, now we see the emergence of Kandy as a tier 2 city, Jaffna being the other one. So it's definitely evolved, but what I haven't seen is that I think there is no lack of good ideas in Sri Lanka. There's actually plenty of good ideas. It's just that we lack execution when we are not seeing startups moving forward from that idea stage and going to the likes of PickMe and growing at that rapid scale that we want to see.
Just to add to that, now when we get different ideas, people used to start off different startups to add to that, and they tend to have this tagline called serial entrepreneur. I think you have a lot to share on that. If you could mix a little bit on that as well.
Right. So yeah, I think now most of these are all catchphrases, right? We've all grown up watching TechCrunch, to listening to all this media, what is they're saying, and they talk about people becoming serial entrepreneurs, and they're doing the same thing. So pursuing too many good ideas is also a very bad idea, because you don't end up executing anything. That's been one of the challenges for us as well, where we help companies raise money from angel investors, because we want to ensure that when we take a company, that these guys are putting their 100%. But what they're putting is 20%, and they're putting it into 5 different companies, which has no relevance to each other. So it's a lot more tough in terms of doing it. It's not about making money. A startup is not about generating revenue. It's about creating value and constantly creating that value throughout the value chain, to which you end up spending a lot of time.
Amazing.
Can I just add to that? I think we had a great time for startups, right? See, again, I'm going back in time again. When I started, there wasn't much of capital out there, right? So you had to do everything on your own. So you had to make sure your kettle is boiling while you work on your R&D. But now you can actually go into an R&D project without any revenue source. So I think this is a fantastic time to do a startup. And every one of you who are here thinking about a startup, I think you should just jump on it right now. Because if you don't do it now, you'll never probably do it ever again in your life. So if you want to take that opportunity, I think this is a fantastic time to do it. There's money out there. It's all in your hands. You finally need to execute it. So you might fail, right? And here in our country, when you fail, people look down on you. But I'll tell you, I've gone through that exercise, but you are going to be successful. You give it another try, one day you will strike gold.
It's basically now or never, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe a small comment to that. A good friend of mine who worked for an entrepreneurial office, she told me once, your third business will succeed. So you will first have 2 failures. That's fine, you learned from it, and the third one will be successful.
Amazing. Jiffry, now something I personally didn't believe is to revolutionize this three-wheel industry. I thought it will never happen. We get on the three-wheel, we get off, then we bargain, and then we pay. But now it's completely revolutionized. And there can be other markets which are really hard to revolutionize as well. There can be other entrepreneurs who are trying to do that as well. What were the steps for you to enter into this game strategically or step by step to hunt down this tough audience?
Well, we did a lot of things. I think whoever's followed us would have understood what, the kind of strategies we deployed. I'm not going to go into detail, but I think the most important thing is to understand the industry. What were the challenges? Sometimes it's good to look at it from the outside. When you're in the industry, you take it to assumption that it won't work, right? But when you look from outside, you would actually think, hey, you know what, I can really crack this. And that's pretty much what we did. Obviously we did a lot of brainstorming, trying to figure out how it can be. I mean, I had a lot of people, my own, what can I say, mentors who said it won't work, right? As long as you have confidence and you validate it, that it can work, I think anyone should go for it, right? Even I can, I can see a lot of projects that might not work, but I will never say that it won't work because I wouldn't know the industry very well. So I think we need to have that open mind, and that's what we did. We had a very open mind. We said, hey, you know what, we think we can crack it, right? And we just went after it. We just made sure that we know where it can go wrong, and we made sure the strategy answers that problem.
That is basically getting your product into a proper market fit, I guess.
Very much, yeah, exactly. Because see, our business is not just technology. It's a huge operations game as well. I consider it a 50-50, we have 50% operations and 50% technology. We had to make sure both of these matches, and that's what we did. We had to make sure the operations go smoothly, and we deploy the technology where it matters.
Great. Now, I have seen most of the startups, they tend to scale up really fast, even without considering whether they have really providing the answers for their customers, or basically without a proper product market fit. So Chalinda, my question to you is, how do you see these problems, how do the startups that are coming to CrowdIsland, how much do they think about the product market fit when they come to their scaling stage?
Right. I think it's good to give a little bit of context into that question. So I deal predominantly with seed stage companies. Most of these guys are doing their startup for the first time. And most of them might also not have a lot of experience in the corporate world. So they don't understand, they haven't really experienced how business takes place. In terms of product market fit, I don't think there is a finish line. As your product evolves, as the market evolves, your product market fit also evolves, and you have to keep monitoring that constantly. And that's why, like what Zulfer said, you have to understand the industry that you're playing in. You have to spend a lot of time understanding the stakeholders, what's the decision-making process, who are the key people, how long does it take, what are certain things. You might have regulatory challenges, you might have social and cultural challenges, so how do you address to those things and have strategies for each of these things. So that's why doing a startup is very, very tough, especially in a country like Sri Lanka where you have a lot of inefficiencies around you. So you have to manage everything. You have to be good at managing people, technology, talking to the customers, and so on. So most of the companies that come to us, they come with an idea. And over the years of me mentoring, I think I've spent about a little over 40,000 hours across the past 7.5 years, across 50 companies, more than 50 companies. So the biggest challenge that I see is that even if a company does a research, they do it for a period of time, they get that data and they think that is carved in stone, which is not the case. It always keeps on evolving. So that's one of the things, and which is why we also adopt a bit of a hands-on approach when we work with the company so that we can guide them. So you really need that guidance for them. But it's a complete different scenario when you are working with someone who has a bit of experience working, at least 2 to 3 years, and have also climbed up the ladder in a corporate world, because then they understand how these dynamic things works.
Great. Sofie, is there anything for you to add when working with sustainability and innovative products in your domain in Amsterdam? In your domain, like you work a lot on food, agriculture, sustainability, innovation, and in that audience, how does this product market fit come into play? And any comments to share on that? Basically, okay, assume I'm going to introduce a product, and how could I get the insights, whether I'm answering the audience properly in your domain?
Let me give an example of CirculArt. So I'm developing a platform where material of companies which is thrown away is sold to designers as a starter for the circular economy. So we'll try to move away from a linear economy towards a circular economy. And it's quite a challenge to find the product fit, because actually it's already a challenge to find who exactly is a customer. Because you can either look towards the designer or towards the company, right? And what I find also in the stage of scaling, so you can move. You can also start with a particular customer. So I started with the designer to sell the material just to the designer. But when scaling, the customer will change and the company will be the customer, because he will also pay for to be part of this sustainability network and to be part of a circular company.
Right. Anything for you, Jiffry? Because I have heard, when I go on PickMe rides, I normally talk to the driver, and they say a lot of comments how the things have changed. And I usually ask them, were you there at the beginning? They used to say first we got 100 or 1,000 free phones, and then they evolved. How did that transition come into play, and how did you scale from that point onwards?
Yeah, I mean, it was very important that we did that at the beginning, because here is something, we're introducing a product to a market that is not IT literate. So we had to do that. We had to take them through the learning curve. And I think now we're matured, but we still have a lot more to do. I think like you said, there is a lot of work to be done for the product to fit into that industry. So yeah, I mean, that's a very important element in a startup business.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, since Sofie mentioned about agriculture as well. So right now, since we are part of a lot of these competitions that are taking place, we are seeing now a trend of technology guys getting into agricultural tech, which we've been advocating for the past 3 years, and it's only now we are seeing little startups coming up with ideas. And I think a couple of months ago, I met about 5. So out of the 5 companies, 4 guys, they have visited a paddy field a few times, and now they have built this IoT product, which transform how farming is done. Which, when we started asking questions, we realized they haven't really understood the problems that the farmer is having. Right, so it's very tough. I know. I think even Jiffry and Zulfer, I call you Zulfer for some reason, man. You used to drive taxis, right? So they were drivers because they want to understand the psyche of being a driver as well as having a passenger. I know that Sanjeeva Veeravan of WSO2, he's a Uber driver as well, which is competitors. You should convert him to PickMe. But it's just the whole product market fit. You have to be there. You can just visit and observe and do it. So that's one of the key things that we've learned is that, especially in Sri Lanka, you have to understand how people this thing, because you can't really, put them in a bucket and say this is how it is, and then scale on that.
True. So, seems that the product market fit or the understanding the customer, like taking their point of view, is much needed when scaling your startup. Moving on, so Chalinda, you have been working with a lot of startups, helping them, mentoring them, connecting them for investments. Is there a model that you follow to filter out the startups that come to you? And any tips for the audience or for the entrepreneurs who are out there, so they could filter themselves as well?
Right. I think in terms of models, what everyone focuses on a business plan. I've pretty much given up asking for people their business plan for the past 2 years. So typically how, even in mature markets, what happens is, even if you're having a venture fund or a competition, whatever, you submit your idea, people first evaluate the idea, the market fit, and then they look at the team. So I do the reverse side of it. I first talk with the people and see how much of the problem do they feel, because I find two types of entrepreneurs.
Pardon, please. People in the sense the team.
The team,
yeah, right.
The team. So I find actually 3 types of entrepreneurs. One is pretty easy, that is the entrepreneurs. So because they have seen all the success stories, now, being an entrepreneur in Sri Lanka is pretty cool right now. Very, very funky thing. It's like the 70s rock stars that has evolved into entrepreneurs right now. So everyone's getting on that bandwagon. So I think with all experience, within the first half an hour, I know whether this guy is serious about doing it or he's doing it for the fashion. So that's easy. Second part is, you have guys who are doing it because they feel the pain. They have gone through that experience and they're so pissed off that they want to solve it. So that's one part. And then the second type is people who actually see the opportunity in a particular market, in a particular vertical. So how you evaluate, so I've done on my matrix, this is again, it's a disclaimer, it works for me. I'm not saying that it's gonna work for anyone else. Nobody has, CMU or, Harvard hasn't done a study on it. So I have no proof, but it has been working for me for the past, I would say about 3 years now, is that I know if you have an entrepreneur who's actually looking at an opportunity, more than anything, that entrepreneur has to be a bit matured, because the window of opportunity is something that will keep on reducing, and it's not only you who sees it, everybody else sees it. So it's about your maturity, your execution capabilities, that's going to make it or break it. The guys who actually feel the pain, they're going to put in that sweat to ensure that it's solved, no matter what. Because those who actually feel the opportunity, the moment things become very tough, very hard, they tend to fade, and then slowly they disappear. So predominantly the model, so I have 2 matrices for people in those 2 areas which I use, and it's predominantly spending time with the people, because the rest of the thing, the markets, the idea, you can pivot, you're smart enough, you can make it work, essentially.
Great. So you stressed a lot upon team. When it comes to team or the company culture is also required when it comes to scaling. Like that actually drives the company. Culture drives performance. So Sofie, I think you have made a creative approach in your organization in creating company culture.
Yeah, so as Chalinda mentioned, in the startup phase, it's very important to look at the team. But I would also, or what I've seen from experience, it's also when scaling up that the team is going to change a lot, and to put a lot of attention to building up the team and the culture is very important. So often I've saw that the founder of a company is a very creative, innovative person. And when scaling, he's more looking for a business straightforward person to keep the business running and scaling. but often that clashes. And I've seen already several examples that the CEO has then been kicked out of his own company because it's clashing with the team that's there to scale up the company. So I would give the advice to really make sure the culture and the vision of a company is kept together in the scaling up phase. Which of course it's important to bring in these people, but then also to put time and effort in bringing it together.
Great, great, amazing. So team culture matters a lot. Anything for you to add to that, Jiffry?
I think they've answered it.
Yeah,
I think
very
culture
well.
is very important.
Right.
We just need to have the right culture for growth.
Let me get to a general aspect. Now, recently, PayPal listed Sri Lanka into the to be considered list like some time ago, and it was happening, and Stripe is now also into the game for most of the e-commerce sites and so on. So like people were saying PayPal is not there, so we can't do that. My question is like in two aspects. If such a platform comes into play, what are the opportunities that the startups have? And if it doesn't come into play, we can't expect everything to happen. What are the other point of views that the entrepreneurs or the startups who are coming up could look into? It's open, yeah.
I mean, I think this was, discussed during the morning keynote speech as well. I think the hashtag was "Let's get paid" or something similar, right? So I see two things. Definitely, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, being an entrepreneur is about having very little resources and trying to make the best out of it, right? If you have the payment gateway, the investors putting in money, it's like a very famous president saying that, he only got $1 million from his father to start, which is pretty good. No one is fortunate like that. So you have to make, and if you take some of the e-commerce players that we have, they have found out workarounds to it. The majority of the problem arises actually from the freelancers. So they're the ones who are actually having the problem because they do work and now they can't get paid. So whether a freelance model will convert into a startup and then maybe you do one project or web development project per month. Can you do multiple of that? So that's one side you need to think about because I know guys like even Search Viral, so they have found workaround and it works for them. Yes, they lose out a bit of on the conversion rates, but they're catching up in terms of scaling it. And the other side is the moment that you have PayPal and all these things coming into play, you also open up the market to the big boys. The eBays to Amazon, and then all the e-commerce guys will be competing with them. And they have very deep pockets, right? So how do you manage that? So everything has a silver lining. I guess rather than nagging about it, you obviously have to lobby and get things changed, but you can't really wait till, as you said, things change.
True. Okay, now, so idea, then you start off, then you get your first few clients, then sometimes you might go for investments, and then you get the money. Okay, now you have money. Zulfer, if you have the required assuming we have the required investments, and for us to go beyond that, assume PickMe, what are your other plans, or what are the other steps that you are going to take to scale the company? Maybe individualization or better customer experience.
If I may put it into context of the topic today, I think if you have the money and if you have to scale, I think the biggest problem we have here is finding the people, right? Even in technology and even in operations, we need to have people who think,
Just
like,
to add to it, like maybe the bottlenecks you are facing.
Yeah, exactly. So who could think like perhaps, how can I shoot to the moon? That's the kind of thinking we need. We need people who've gone through that curve, who understand how can I break the glass and how do I You know, how do I break that space and actually move into new spaces? I think that's where we are missing, and I think that's where we need to create an ecosystem where people would start thinking like that, that attitude, that persistent to do that.
I think similar on lines, right? I don't think, as I mentioned, we have a lot of people starting up new ideas, but when you want to scale, especially, you need people with experience joining your company. Right now, the trend is a lot of these university kids are getting into startups, but we are not seeing people who've been working for John Keels and some of these big corporates who are in their early 30s or mid 30s leaving that company and doing their own thing, because you need that experience, you need that maturity to really drive and build a company. So that's what's really lacking, because at one point you can do only so much with an idea. The moment you start taking it to even a different market outside Sri Lanka, you need that skill, and there's a lack in that. So that's, I think, staying in line with the topic for the discussion as well.
So it seems that team, culture, experience, a lot matters when scaling.
Every single thing matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
to add to that, I think it's important in the scaling phase to see the product not as a static product, but also as a thing that's alive and is evaluating and evolving all the time.
Right. So I think we are short on time. Just to wrap up, is there an advice that you could give to the audience in just one sentence so we could wrap up smoothly? In one sentence.
I think if you're really serious about starting a company, what I have figured out is that it's pretty much a minimum of 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 for the next 7 to 10 years. So you need to figure out whether you are really ready to make that commitment, especially if you're taking money from the investors. That is really important. So make sure that you are true to yourself and you understand why you are getting into this whole game, and it's to solve a problem, like what Zulfer has done with PickMe in terms of transportation, or everybody else. It has to matter to you. And if you're starting off thinking that you're going to make money, I think finding a job is far, far easier in the long term, and even in the short term.
Sofie?
I will stay close to my own interests, and I will hope for Sri Lanka that they will leapfrog towards sustainability and the circular economy, because I think there are the opportunities for the future.
I think I've given my advice. I think this is a great time. You should all start a startup and see where you can get with it.
So I hope those future billionaires on the audience would be working hard on the tips that we got today. And I think these gentlemen and Sofie deserve a great round of applause.